Hey, and welcome back. Today on the workbench, I have a pretty unique set that came to me in even more of a unique way. So back at the very beginning of 2025, I had a friend reach out to me. He's an older gentleman named Bob, and he's come to see me play jazz over the years locally here in Wisconsin. He's a drummer himself and really just a big fan of drums in general. A couple years ago, he called me and asked me if I could help him get rid of a bunch of drum stuff he had acquired over the last few years because his wife wanted him to get it out of the house. And I actually made a video of that, and it's something like flipping this pile of drums into X dollar amount or whatever. He gave me full permission to sell any of that stuff I didn't need or get rid of it, and it was a fun project, and I think a lot of people on the channel enjoyed it. Now, this set here is something he called me about, like I said, at the beginning of the year, and he asked if I had any interest in his old 50s WFL kit. And I told him pretty frankly that I'm sure it was a great kit, but it really wasn't a good time for me to make a purchase, so I'd probably need to pass. And he told me right then and there that he just wanted me to have them and wanted me to do something with them. So I did not take much time to set aside the time to make the trip and go out and visit him for a bit and pick these up and bring them home. And after sitting in the back room for the last few months, it's finally time to get these things all assembled, bring them back to their original glory, and get to using them. So like I said, this is a 50s era WFL kit. I don't know a ton about these drums. The sizes are very unique and not something I would ever choose. It's 13, 16, and 20. Back in the days, you had all these vintage outfits with names like the Downbeat kit or the Hollywood setup. And this setup was referred to as a bop kit. And to me, a bop kit has always been 12, 14, 18 for bebop music or small group jazz. And I've never been a huge fan of 13 and 16-inch toms until a couple years ago when I got some bigger toms for one of my grutch kits. I love 20-inch bass drums, but I've never played 20-inch bass drums with this large of drums in comparison. So it kind of seems like a weird grouping, but I think this might be a blessing in disguise because this kit is special and it was given to me to keep and cherish. So this isn't one of those projects where I'm going to fix it up and flip it. I need to hang on to this and show my appreciation for Bob's generosity on giving this to me. I love the finish. It's white marine pearl. It's in pretty good shape, and they all have seemed to weather closely. Maybe the bass drum is a little more yellowed, and these are a little more clear white, but they look really good together. There's not a ton of work here for me to do, and yes, I do have the rims, the tension rods, and most of the other parts for these, so it's not a huge endeavor in terms of restoring these. It's mostly cleaning them up and reassembling them. So I'm going to get into each drum. I think we're going to start here with the smallest, the 13-inch rack tom, and work our way up. And I'll stop and talk a little bit along the way about each little quirks with the drums. So let's get into it. So first things first, I just want to give these a good cleaning. Most of the drums seem to have nickel hardware, which doesn't have that glossy sheen to it. But this 13-inch tom seems to have maybe chrome hardware because it is a little bit more bright and shimmery. So I don't really know if all these drums were built together, but like I said before, they all match pretty well. For this cleaning, I'm just going to be using some soapy water and a microfiber cloth. I think that'll be fine. These edges are in great shape, so I don't even plan on using bearing edge conditioner or anything like that as I get them reassembled. One other unique thing about this drum when I picked it up is this has a little rack tom plate for like one of those rail mount setups. And the bass drum is a virgin drum in terms of no mounting system on the bass drum. So that's another indicator that maybe this drum came separately. But again, I'm not too concerned about that. So for the heads here, the ones that Bob included with these were a fiber skin, I'm guessing on top, And then the bottom is a Renaissance RD. I think that's a Diplomat, their thinnest head. I'm going to go ahead and throw them on here as is for now, but maybe I'll swap these out for something later if I don't like the sound. But I do think these fiber skins will be really warm for some big band jazz playing. And now that I've got all these tension rods sorted, I'm going to add some white lithium grease to them as I thread them in, just to keep any friction from building up with old gunk and whatever else is in here. All right, I think this one is good to go. So now for the 16 by 16 inch floor tom. Again, this one looks like the other, but I think it has the nickel hardware here for all the lugs. And then one thing that's unique about this is it has an internal muffler on the top side, but the 13 doesn't. So that just makes me think that these were not all originally made together. I love a 16 by 16 inch floor tom. I primarily use 14s, but 16s are a lot of fun and they can get something different to them. When I was in high school, I had a Ludwig Club Date kit from the 1960s, and it had these same sort of spring-loaded floor tom leg brackets, which I'm really not a fan of, but they're kind of cool for the time that you don't actually have to use a wing nut to tighten them. You just press on this lever, and that would loosen the tension on the spring so that you could adjust the height with your leg. So the legs here are just straight. They don't have any sort of bend out for the feet. And that brings up another quick thing, is that there's no rubber feet for any of these. I keep all sorts of spare parts in my back room, so I'm pretty sure I have some thinner rubber feet that I can slide on here. I'm not sure if they'll all match, but at least get it in more working order. All right, I think I lucked out. I have just enough. I have 3 of these. They're all worn in different ways, and they're definitely not from the same set of legs. But they fit on here nicely with just a compression fit. So for the heads on this one, he had 2 fiber skin ambassadors. So fiber skins on top and bottom. I've played fiber skins on top heads for a while, especially for jazz playing. I like the way they respond with brushes. It's different than your standard coated head. But I've not tried fiber skins as a resonant head, so that should be interesting for this kit. Well, that went fairly smoothly until it came time to try to get all these legs in these floor tom brackets. If I were really planning to keep this kit and use it regularly for gigging, I might consider swapping out these brackets. I measured them in the last few months that I have them, and they're like 2-inch hole spacing, and there are no brackets on the market that fit that, but there are a bunch that are 2 1/16. That's probably what I would do, or else I could buy the indie brackets, which are retrofit and have adjustable hole spacing, but those are a little more expensive. And as you can see so far, I have nothing invested into this kit, so I wouldn't mind keeping it that way. All right, so last drum up is the bass drum. Like I mentioned before, this one is a virgin bass drum, so no tom mount, which is super unique for vintage drums. Almost everything had a tom bracket on it. This one looks the most rough and beat up in terms of usage, which, I don't know, that makes sense. It's on the floor. The inside doesn't have like water damage, but it definitely shows its age way more than the others. The leg brackets on here are kind of these brackets that are just like a spike. I usually don't like these, but it does seem to be pretty firm. So we'll see once I actually get to setting this up and playing it if these could survive in the modern world for gigging. This one tuned up pretty nicely. I did put felt strips on both the batter and resonant side, so that might be a bit too much, especially because these are the power stroke heads with that dampening ring, but I don't have any other muffling in here in terms of a pillow or a towel, so I didn't want to have to open this drum back up again and throw something in here. I went ahead and ordered a logo decal. I don't think this is one that would have actually been on drums, but when I was on Google looking up WFL drums, I saw some people who had this logo on it, and I think it's from product catalogs. I think that'll look nice up here at the top and be really great on this fiber skin head. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that installed, and then we should be able to get to playing these drums, which is the part I'm most looking forward to. So certainly anytime you set up a new kit, there's a bit of a learning curve with the quirks and how everything fits together, and this set is no different. For instance, the bass drum here, when I set it up with my bass drum pedal clamped on the backside, it slopes forward no matter how much I adjust the spurs. I can't get it to lift up enough where it would lean back, which is typically what I like to do to keep the bass drum firmly in place and keep it from drifting forward. The spurs here do have spike ends, so it might be okay, but not something I'm used to there. Otherwise, I think these drums set up pretty nicely, and from just tapping around and tuning them a little bit, the setup feels pretty good. I usually don't like 13 and 16-inch toms. I'm much more into compact sizes, but everything here feels really good together. Before we get into playing, I should probably say that I'm also using my 70s Ludwig Superphonic snare. I thought that would be an appropriate snare drum to match up with this kit. I've got these tuned pretty low right now, lower than I would use if I was playing any sort of like jazz big band or something like that, but I thought it would be fun to see what's the tubby sound these drums can get. So pretty loose and flappy, but I was also messing around with some muffling, and I think that really makes this tuning sing. These are my Roots EQs, probably my favorite muffling tool that I own. I use them on toms all the time. So check this out. I mean, that's rock and roll to me. The kick drum, I'm using one of those big, fluffy fleece beaters from Vader. I think it's the Vintage Bomber. I like it because it doesn't get a lot of punch or attack, and I thought that would complement these vintage shells pretty well. So let's go ahead and play a little bit. I know I was playing jazz, but they're sure punchy to me. Maybe this would be good for big band music. Let's go ahead and try something a little more standard rock and roll. Yeah, these are really fun to play on. I like the fiber skin heads, and they respond really well. Now, on top of doing these in a low tuning, I also want to crank them up and see how they sound for some higher pitched bebop-like sounds, since this is a bop set. The toms are definitely versatile. I like them in the low tuning. I like them in the high tuning. The bass drum to me, though, that's where this thing sings, is in its higher tuning range. These sound awesome at this range. This is old school big band all the way. I think a lot of people associate jazz drummers with smaller size drums, but man, back in the 40s and 30s, like the age of big band music, these drummers were playing 24, 26-inch kick drums, and toms probably similar sizes to this. This was the sound of the era. It wasn't until the 50s and 60s when bebop music and small group jazz was really mainstream that smaller drums became in vogue. So this is totally a big band set to me. I feel so grateful that I was gifted this kit from Bob, and I'm certainly looking forward to keeping it in my collection. Back when I was in high school, I had a vintage Ludwig Club Date set like I was mentioning earlier, and I used that a lot into college and the start of my professional career. But as I was living in an apartment and didn't have the space to collect numerous drum sets, it was just hard to hold on to because I couldn't use it in the teaching studio with students. I didn't want to take it out on gigs because it was so fragile and old, and so I ended up getting rid of it. But this certainly reminds me a lot of that set, even though it's different sizes, and I definitely have a space where I can afford to keep an extra drum set around. So I'm excited to have this in my collection. I think the best way to really put this through its paces will be to bring it out to a gig I have tomorrow night with a big band that I co-lead, Water City Jazz Orchestra. We play once a month. We do a lot of older swing band music, but we also do plenty of contemporary stuff too. And I think this will really be a blast to have out and use with an ensemble of that size with all the horns and rhythm section. So I'm going to try to throw in some footage of that. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this kit, so leave a comment down below. I think if I was really going to start using it regularly, I'm going to have to make a few changes and tweaks to it, but this is certainly a fun time capsule to have around.